Hi, this is Jason Lisk with Pool Genius here with Sean Farnham of ESPN. Sean's in our football contest, the Survivor Bowl, but he's also a little better known for his coverage of college basketball. You've probably seen him on various ESPN studio shows or on game broadcasts. Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I mean, now, first of all, I attribute all of my career success to an article you wrote on me, probably, about 8 years ago now. But I mean, I think that was pretty much the launching point of my career, was when you followed me around for like 12 hours and were like, why am I here with this guy? But no, I appreciated the article first and foremost.
Uh-huh.
And I appreciate coming on here today.
Well, I loved, hey, you were clearly somebody who loves the sport, is going to grind on the sport, and is going to cover it intensely. And that's what you still do. I mean, you're on shows Thursday at midnight. I'm watching you in the studio, and then you're covering games. I don't know how many you do each week, but you're definitely on several. What are you doing this year? Like, do you know what your schedule is going to be like? Where will people see you this year on ESPN?
Yeah, I think it's going to be good. I think I'm going to probably be out of studio a little bit more. I'm going to be back on games a little bit more, which I think I'm really looking forward to. I'm going to be mainly probably in the Big 12 this year. And obviously, as that conference has expanded and added teams like Arizona, BYU, and obviously Houston and the success that they've had since they came over from the American, the depth of that conference continues to be amazing. So I'm really looking forward to that. The environments are great. I'll still be in studio some back in Bristol, but probably not as much as I have been over the last couple of years. So I'll get used to not being at the DoubleTree there in Bristol, Connecticut. But I'm looking forward to being in a lot of the great environments that we have across the country.
Yeah, the Big 12 now pretty much covers the country. I mean, I know you're an LA guy or a West Coast guy.
Yep.
So you get some out there at West now, but you also get to maybe Orlando, maybe, West Virginia, all sorts of places. So let's break down this year. We'll start with the Big 12, but then we'll go outside because we saw Houston reach the national final again, have a strong team. I know they have a few losses, but are they still the class of the Big 12 as we enter this year? And then who are the other contenders?
Sure. I mean, they've got 9 guys that wore a uniform in a national championship game. I think that matters. They have 3 starters back in Tugler and Sharp and Uzan. I think Uzan I saw at the NBA Combine, and I think the decision could have been made for him to stay in the draft. Probably would have been a second-round pick, and I think he's a guy that probably would have stuck. But I think that he understands the development as a Houston Cougar and what it means to be the point guard of that program. And he saw his growth last year after transferring from Oklahoma, from where it was in December when Coach called him as soft as butter in the microwave, to where he was in that NCAA tournament run. And if the projection continues to move in that direction, I think he could probably play himself into a first-round pick. So I think it's been really interesting for this roster, because one of the things that we haven't seen in Kelvin Sampson's tenure is him relying on a lot of freshmen. They have an outstanding recruiting class with 3 guys that they're going to have to count on. And now the benefit is, because of the 3 starters that I just named, those 3 guys can try to fight to be their 4th or 5th option. And so that makes them a little bit more of like that Stephon Castle role that you saw from UConn a couple of years ago, where maybe these freshmen aren't asked early to have to carry the load or be a main player every single night, but they grow, they mature, they understand the system, and come the end of the season, we're talking about them as Houston makes a deep run in the NCAA tournament again, and they should make a deep run in the NCAA tournament again, and then they end up being maybe the first guy drafted from the Houston Cougars roster this year. But it is going to be interesting because Kelvin Sampson requires a lot at the defensive end of the floor. And if you aren't committed to that end of the floor, you're not getting minutes. And we saw that even last year with a guy that was a top 100 recruit, Mercy Miller, who barely saw the floor at all. And I anticipate that his role will probably emerge this year with a year of understanding and the way he can score the basketball, to be one of those guys that comes off the bench and adds a little bit of production. But, as Kellen Sampson said, walking off the floor at the Big 12 tournament last year, he looked at me and said, "We are still Houston." And that was when Juwan Roberts was not playing on the game during that game. And you know what? They are still Houston. And I don't anticipate that this is changing anytime soon. They have made the transition from the American to the Big 12 look easy. I remember when they came in, everybody said, hey, this is a Houston roster and a Houston program that's had success at the American, but now they're going to get tested in the mighty Big 12.
Yeah, I remember that, and
You know?
you know, good basketball travels.
Yep. Defense
And
travels. Toughness
defense
travels.
travels. Juwan Roberts is not back. He feels like he's been there for 6 years. I swear he was
Yeah.
dunking on people 6 years ago in the NCAA tournament. I know I'm probably exaggerating, but it feels like he was always part of it. But they did do it in the Big 12 tournament without him. That is going to be interesting. Who else in the Big 12 would you say is a contender for the second weekend? Like,
I will tell you this: BYU right now is good enough to maybe win the whole thing.
yeah.
I spent some time around Kevin Young's team, and AJ DeBonsa is as good as advertised. He is a top 1% athlete. He has great positional length. He was number one, obviously, in the ESPN 100 for good reason. He has versatility. He can play anywhere from the 4 all the way to the 1. And maybe what's most impressive is for a player that's his caliber, a guy that's projected to potentially be the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft, he has seamlessly worked his way into this roster and understands the value of experience. And so he's leaning in on guys like Richie Saunders and trying to learn from Richie, who, by the way, down the stretch of last year was as good as a shooter as anyone in the country. He could make 100 three-point shots this year. That's very doable for Richie Saunders because he's going to be able to play off and relocate on whether it's AJ and his versatility, driving, attacking, and drawing two, and then kicking. Whether it's Robert Wright, the transfer, the very good freshman guard last year at Baylor, who transferred in, who's excellent at attacking downhill, drawing two, and then kicking out. I think Richie Saunders is going to get a lot of really clean looks this year. I think the biggest key, there's 2 keys, I think, for BYU. And one is their interior presence. Kebakeda has got to stay out of foul trouble. And then they have to continue to develop a guy by the name of Xavion Stanton, who is a 7 foot tall, lanky, thin interior rim protector. He's an elite level shot blocker, and he can get on the offensive glass, and he's really good at getting to that dunker spot. He can pick and pop and stretch and hit the three, but he's still raw and he's still very thin. So how does his body match with the physicality that you'll see in the Big 12? So the interior is a little bit of a question for BYU if Kebakeda gets into foul trouble. The other thing that I would point out to people is Kennard Davis is a stud. And the transfer from Southern Illinois has come in and brought a defensive mentality to this BYU roster that I think should really excite a lot of people right now. And before I saw them practice, I probably had them behind Texas Tech. After watching them practice, I probably put them ahead of Texas Tech right now. And, Texas Tech has got a really good program. I think Arizona's really good this year as well. Experience back for Tommy Lloyd, really good recruiting class. The Big 12 doesn't slip. It just reloads. And maybe it's different teams in different years. But I think we're starting to see some consistency up at that top. And I think those teams, all 4 of those teams that I just mentioned are good enough to be Sweet 16 teams. Now, how they develop over the course of the year matter. I mean, JT Toppin comes back as the guy in the Big 12 as far as a returner goes, that you look at for Grant McCaslin. And then you look at Christian Anderson, who I thought was one of the best freshmen in the country. He's going to have an expanded out role this year and asked to do a lot more for Texas Tech. They went in the transfer portal. They found pieces that he feels fit their need and match what they do defensively. A little bit of concern is can they rebound at the same clip that they did a year ago? I thought that was a huge part of their ability to gain more possessions than their opponent because they never gave up offensive rebounds. They were a really good defensive rebounding team, created turnovers, had the opportunity to run and score off those turnovers. I think Arizona, as I mentioned earlier, their recruiting class is outstanding. But I think that when you look at Arizona, it's not just about the recruiting class. I think Jaden Bradley comes back. Toby Awaka is back. Anthony Del Orso is back. Krivas is back. Like, you've got pieces there that are really, really strong for Tommy Lloyd. And then you add into the fact that you've got multiple top 20 recruits that are high-level, elite-level athletes that just have a toughness and a grit about them. I think Tommy Lloyd's got a team that is ready-made to be a second weekend team as well in the Big 12.
Well, there you have it, folks. A great Big 12 preview for you of the top contenders. I want to expand outside that. You're at SEC Media Days. Last year, we saw by the end of the year, there were, I think, 4 dominant 1 seeds, and they reached Final Four. And they were probably the strongest set of 1 seeds we'd seen in a while, as far as like what they did in the regular season. Not always what we expected, I think, in November. Florida certainly was not being touted as a top 5 team. Auburn we had up there, but most people didn't have in the top 4 preseason. Those 2 teams from the SEC have some well, Auburn definitely has some changes. How's the SEC look compared to last year? Because it was super strong last year.
It's loaded. I mean, this whole adage of it just means more. Like I started doing the SEC, they had 3 teams in the NCAA tournament when I took over Super Tuesday.
Is it a basketball conference now, Sean?
Listen, it's as much as a basketball conference as it is a football conference. It's as much as a women's basketball conference as it is a football conference. It's as much as a softball conference now as it is a football conference. The SEC's ability, and Greg Sankey, Mike Slive, going back to Mike Slive into Greg Sankey now, and you can point at it and say, I have SEC exhaustion and all those things. Okay, they win. They win. And they're loaded every single year. And this year is no difference. They have brands, and their brands show up and they perform well. And I think we're seeing that. And you look at Florida, and I mentioned this when Todd Golden got the job, and people scoffed at me. And I said this at the Final Four the day after he got the job. In the first 6 years, he'd win a national championship. Now, if you looked at his resume before he took the job at Florida, people were questioning, he took San Francisco to the NCAA tournament. That's it. But there was a demeanor and the way that he coaches and his leadership style, and the way that his team and the detail-oriented practices and communication and how effective that is, that just stood out to me. And I joked with him at the Final Four last year. I said, you're making me look really smart right now, so I appreciate it. They go on to win a national championship. They have the best front court in college basketball coming back. Oh. It's without question the best front court in college basketball is the Florida Gators. Now, you have to look at the guard positions. Now, we saw, obviously, the guards that he got via transfers all got better, right? And Walter Clayton Jr. obviously spearheaded all of that with how he performed in the NCAA tournament a year ago. Boogie Fland was a very much so sought-after recruit. But it also needs to be noted that when Boogie Fland stopped playing at Arkansas, they became a better basketball team. And they went to the Sweet 16 without him. And that to me goes, okay, well, can you tap into those highs and lows if you're Todd Golden? And he's a guard whisperer. But can you tap into those highs and lows? Help him understand what the lows were, why things didn't work the way that a lot of people thought it was going to. Understand what he did that was really effective, and maximize and find that medium between the two and bring consistency to his game. If they're able to do that, I think you've got a roster once again that's capable of winning the national championship. But it's between him and Xavier Lee, who needs to cut down on his turnovers. He was very more turnover prone at Princeton. The numbers offensively as far as points production were great, but he had some turnover issues. So you got to have ball control, and you got to be able to make sure that you protect it in order to allow the efficiency to be where you want to be. Like last year, they had a very good assist to turnover rate. That needs to be the same thing again this year. They need to offensively rebound at the same kind of clip that they were a season ago, and that front line should be able to do that. And because of that ability to rebound, because of that length, and because of that experience that they have underneath, that should allow their guards to pressure out a little bit more and allow their defense to be just as efficient. I believe last year it ended up being the 6th most efficient defense in all of college basketball. I would anticipate that they should be around that again. If they are, and those things all check off, then the Florida Gators are a team that's good enough to maybe repeat as national champions. And of course, we haven't seen too many of those squads in recent memory. So it's an oddity when it happens. But certainly the Gators are in play to do that. You look at what Mark Pope has been able to build in year 2. I think the Kentucky Wildcats are loaded. Now, again, you're looking at a roster that is complete overhaul, but this is college basketball as we know it today. Like I think personally, when we cover our sport right now, we talk about transfers to nauseam, and we talk about it often as it's a negative. But the reality of it is it can be a positive. Like when I watch college football coverage right now, everybody talks about Texas Tech. Man, they look at Texas Tech. They went out and they got all these transfers. But let's show you what has made them great. And I think when we do this in basketball, we talk about it as a negative. And it's not. It's the exact same thing that we're seeing in college football. We see opportunities of programs like a Texas Tech to all of a sudden quickly turn around their program, start garnering national headlines. They're playing the right way. They're playing together. They're playing as a cohesive group. The same thing happens in college basketball, and we need to just embrace the fact that this isn't changing. It's not going away anytime soon. So, yeah, we can talk about all these teams that we talk about. You can talk about Kentucky. You can talk about Arkansas. You can talk about any squad you're going to bring up. We're going to talk about transfers. And we're going to talk about guys that are going to have new pivotal roles on new rosters that need to step up and play big. But to me, I think we need to celebrate that, embrace that. It's my job and my responsibility as a college basketball analyst at ESPN to educate the fans as we go throughout the course of the year that, hey, these are the dudes you need to know that have found a new home, and look at how well they're playing and then celebrate that instead of talking to me like, well, that poor coach or this or that. Hey, everybody's playing under the same rules. Everybody's figuring it out. It's okay.
I'd like to pick on some of those points because for your perspective, because it was, last year we had Power Fives dominated, Power Fours dominated, reaching the Sweet 16 in a way they hadn't before. But those teams were powered by players who would have been on mid-majors a decade ago or 20 years ago, right? Clayton got a chance to be in the Final Four. He would not have done that. He was
at Iona. No,
he was under-recruited out of high school. Maybe he's a hidden gem. Same with Janai Broom. Grows, stars at a mid-major, moves on to Auburn. So there were a lot of players that, from a personal perspective, these players they did what we should celebrate.
Yes.
They were underappreciated. They got to move up, right? But the flip side of that is some of these mid-majors, right? Drake identifies a great coach, and now he's gone in a year. So what do we do long-term for is there a solution for the mid-majors? Like English Premier League football, they buy the best players, but there's like a transfer fee, or there's something that compensates the schools that find the hidden gems.
I think Jay Billis has talked about that a little bit as far as if players get to a point where they're under contract and they're employees, is there some sort of, you get something back, whether it's NIL money, whether it's something that allows you maybe to sustain. I also think that last year's NCAA tournament is an aberration. Like we react to what's in front of us, and we immediately go, well, oh my gosh, what is this? Like, this is bad for the mid-majors, and this is well, what happens if this year we get to the NCAA tournament and there's 7 upsets? Like, people go, well, the mid-major upset, it's gone. Is it? Because last time I checked, St. Peter's wasn't better than Purdue that year. They weren't even close to being better than Purdue. And look, I got to UCLA because Princeton knocked off UCLA. Now, if you looked at roster construction, that was the team at UCLA that has come off the heels of winning the national championship, won the conference championship, looked like they were absolutely going to roll through the NCAA tournament and potentially go back-to-back. And they lose in the first round on a backup. And Princeton was not the better team. They weren't. UCLA was. But on that night, Princeton was better, and they won. We're going to see that again. Also, I say this to all fans out of all due respect. I don't hear the same energy when we talk about the college football playoffs. Nobody is pandering to see a second team out of the Mountain West get an opportunity to play Alabama because they had a good year, or someone out of CUSA get another chance or another crack at a big school. We don't see that. We celebrate the excellence that is in the college football landscape, and then we celebrate that when we get down to the Final Four teams, and we're like, look at all of this. We got 2 SEC teams, 2 from the Big Ten, or Notre Dame's in the mix, whatever it may shake out to end up being, and that's obviously going off of last year's college football run. Right. But we celebrate excellence. And I'm sorry, if you watch the quality of basketball that was played last year in the NCAA tournament, as those rounds went on, and we got to the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, the Final Four, the national championship game, those were high-level basketball games. And for me, I celebrate excellence, and I celebrate the fact that we had, players that had an opportunity to level up and felt like they were going to have the opportunity to achieve their lifelong dream of playing against the best competition they could possibly play against and be on the biggest stage they possibly can, and then they thrived. That's what this is all about. That's what the journey is about. Now, if you want to talk about the academic component and you want to talk about what that means as far as a degree goes and online classes and academic standards and all those things that have kind of been lost in the conversation on it, that's a totally different conversation. But if you're looking at a quality NCAA tournament and anybody, I dare anybody to look back on last year's tournament and go, it wasn't a good basketball tournament. It was outstanding. Oh. Cinderella is fun on day 1 and day 2 tops. By the time you get to the Sweet 16, everybody wants to see the best teams play. And that's what we got pretty much for the entire tournament last year. And again, I think that is an outlier. We'll have upsets. There'll be years where we see a team make a run all the way to the Sweet 16. Last year wasn't that year.
Yeah, I do think that it probably was a perfect storm. We did have the COVID type era was kind of coming to an end, but we still had 24-year-olds. I think we're going to see that go down a bit.
Let me also add this in, though, too. What we've also seen, why you see power conference teams sustain, and a lot of these teams are much older than they used to be.
Yes.
part of that is because we see the lowest number of early entries in the NBA draft that we've ever seen because of NIL. So where there were guys that would leave college early to be a second round pick and say, okay, well, I'm going to roll the dice here and I just want to start the clock, get under contract, make money because there's a family need. It's my dream, all of those things. Well, now those players are making $2 million in college basketball. So they're like, well, I'd take a pay cut if I went to the second round right now. I might as well stay here, try to continue to improve, maybe try to play my way into a first round pick. Worst case scenario, I'm probably still a second round pick. And you go out the following year, but you've got more money now because you were able to stay in college and get paid through NIL. So I think that's also a byproduct of what we've seen at a lot of the high majors. It's not just like Milos Uzan is a prime example. 5 years ago, he's gone. He's not coming back. He's going to go try to get paid, and you can't fault him for it. But instead, he's like, you know what? Fringe second round pick, come back, maybe prove for myself I could be a first round pick, make a ton of money playing for Houston this year. I'm good to go. Let's go. And because of that, we see older rosters at the high level. We went through that one and done era, right? When Cal won it in 2012 with Kentucky, and then we saw 2015 that Duke team. Those were the only teams that won, by the way, that were one and done driven teams in college basketball.
Yeah, Cal missed the tournament in some years when it didn't go well, right? And so yeah, I think that certainly has played a factor. I want to ask you. We have our bracket picks. We're going to have people in March that are looking at this. Who are the teams that we don't expect right now? So I'm going to get we've seen many.
What's the parameters? You have to give me the parameters on this because
let's focus on. We saw the Drake situation, but we also have seen Pat Kelsey go to Louisville, turn around right away. Otzelberger in a situation where I think Iowa State had won 0 conference games. So we've seen coaches go in and immediately turn around with some of these transfers or getting a new coaching environment. Who's the coaches you like hitting, let's say, one of the top 6 conferences that are moving up, getting their opportunity, and maybe they're putting a roster together that people aren't expecting to be in the tournament, but you think they have a chance to get in the NCAA tournament?
NC State.
Okay.
Will Wade has a team I think that's going to be top 4 good in the ACC. And I think they're going to win at least 2 games in the NCAA tournament. Like Darian Williams was a huge get for them from Texas Tech. Amazing versatility, good defensive player. Offensively, had a great NCAA tournament at a high usage rate. And I think he's going to be put under that early and often at NC State. They've got a freshman I think is good enough to be an NBA pick. Will Wade, say what you want, right? Like everything that Will Wade got in trouble for, is now legal. Okay? And when you watch his teams, where has he gone that he hasn't immediately found success? So I think the NC State is a pretty good bet. Like if you're entering the college basketball landscape and it's November, it's in October still, but like we haven't started the season yet, and you're like, okay, who should I keep an eye on that's maybe not jumping off the page in the top 25 that has a chance to be like a second weekend team? I think it's NC State. And I would parlay that into a lot of the conversation we had about the ACC a year ago and how down it was. I think has also changed, and I think that's in large part because of Pat Kelsey. I think Virginia has a chance to do that as well. I mean, you're going to see a Virginia roster under Coach Odom that will probably score more points in the first half in half their games than they scored in an entire game based on the other, Tony Bennett's system. And that's not a slap against Tony Bennett. He played a very deliberate system. He wanted the ball control offense, the pack line defense. There, Coach Odom was going to play in the 80s. And he's got a roster that he really, really likes. So if all of a sudden the ACC gets those 2 schools going, I think Red Autry at Syracuse has a more complete. Sadiq White is an elite level athlete freshman that he has there. You bring back experienced roster around the freshman class. I think they're middle of the pack in the ACC. But I think when you look at it and you go, okay, well, Duke once again is Duke. Louisville is back. They're back on the national landscape. They're not going anywhere. Mikel Brown is one of the best freshmen in the entire country. Pat Kelsey's got a really good squad again this year. I think Carolina's back. They've got better size underneath. They're going to be able to rebound the ball a lot better than they were able to last year, and I think that's going to be really important for Coach Davis. Obviously, barely got in the NCAA tournament a season ago, thumped San Diego State before losing to Ole Miss, but they've got size underneath, and they've got a really talented freshman in Caleb Wilson, who's going to be a first-round pick. So the ACC is kind of trending in that direction again, where we're going to be talking about them more on the national landscape in a positive light than what we've seen over the last couple of years, where it was like, okay, well, Carolina won 10 out of 13 games, but a lot of those wins came against teams that didn't have winning records or were struggling. I think that depth is coming back. I think Miami's going to be much improved from where they were a year ago. So if you're looking at one of those, the top conferences, and you're saying, which conference is moving in the right direction? I think it's the ACC. Now, that's not a slap against the Big 12, the SEC, or the Big 10. I think those conferences are locked in and solid. And so they're not having drop-off. But I think we're starting to see that talent come back in the ACC on an uptick. And I think that's going to bode well for college basketball overall. Like, look, college basketball is better when Carolina's great. Yep. College basketball is better when Louisville's great. College basketball is great when Duke is great. People care about the brands in college basketball. And the same can be said, by the way, for the Big East. College basketball is better when Madison Square Garden is rocking, and Rick Pitino's got a squad again this year to show you that last year wasn't an aberration. They reloaded all the way up in the transfer portal. They got guys from high major programs that are ready to come in and wreak havoc, and I think his squad is good enough to win a national championship. Oh, by the way, so's Dan Hurley's squad. So I think those matchups in particular are great. You know, you think about UConn, St. John's, whether it's in Connecticut, whether it's in Madison Square Garden, whether it's in the Big East tournament, those are going to be can't-miss games on television this year, even though we don't have at ESPN the broadcast rights to those games. I'm telling you, I'm going to be tuned in when those teams are going after each other, because they're both teams that are quality enough to win a national championship, and I think that bodes well, even though the Big East doesn't have the depth it once had. The top of the Big East is really strong yet. Look, Dave Fleming and I have called over the last 15 years, I think all but 3 or 4 of those games between the Gales and the Zags. And we certainly would like to be on the call of the final one up in Spokane. There's no doubt about it.
Well, I wish you luck in that. I appreciate your time.
No worries.
And looking forward to you on college basketball. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.